The first graph is the parent graph of f of x equals 1 over x squared. While it is forming, I'll explain the graph characteristics. Domain is all real numbers except 0, meaning the graph touches every point on the x-axis, including negatives, except for 0. Range is y is greater than 0, meaning the graph touches every positive value from 1 to infinity without going lower than 0, and negatives. End behaviors are as x approaches negative infinity, f of x approaches 0. As x approaches infinity, f of x approaches 0. Base of the graph will never get to or lower than 0. Vertical asymptote at x equals 0, horizontal asymptote at y equals 0. Graph will basically never touch 0 on the x-axis and the y-axis. There are no x or y intercepts. The graph basically looks like two exponential graphs, one decay, one growth, or simply two boomerangs above the y-axis, and that are reflected from each other. The second graph, g of x is equal to the square root of x over x, is the inverse of the parent graph. Domain is x greater than 0, and the range is y is greater than 0. The graph is suppressed in the first quadrant, only being able to touch only positive values on the x and y axis. Can't touch 0 or negatives. End behavior is as x approaches 0, f of x approaches infinity, and as x approaches infinity, f of x approaches 0. The graph goes to infinity on both the x and y axis. Vertical asymptote at x equals 0, and horizontal asymptote at y equals 0. The graph won't touch 0 ever on the x or y axis. There is no x or y intercepts. The graph looks like a basic exponential decay graph, or simply a cut half of the parent graph having the left side removed. Alright, the last graph is h of x equals 1 over x plus 2 squared plus 3. Compared to the parent function, this function has a c value of negative 2 and a d value of positive 3. The c value shifts the graph 2 units left, and a d value translated 3 units up. Domain is all real numbers except negative 2. Graph touches every x value except negative 2. Range is y is greater than 3. The graph goes higher than 3 while always approaching and without ever touching or passing 3. End behavior as x approaches negative infinity, f of x approaches 3. As x approaches infinity, f of x approaches 3. The graph will never touch or pass 3 on the y-axis. Vertical asymptote at x equals negative 2, and horizontal asymptote at y equals 3. There aren't any x-intercepts, but there's a y-intercept at 0 and 13 over 4, or 3 and 1/4. The graph looks like a parent graph except move 2 units left and 3 units up. Similar to parabolas, the graphs will either face upwards or downwards. And if you combine the graphs together into one graph, you get this abomination.